She's an analytics expert. We were very lucky to have her here. She joined COMD Communications in 2006, and she founded their COMD Research Services for their clients in 2011. She leverages her research expertise to help her clients. And some of her clients are pretty impressive. She does work for Time Warner, HIA Group, AARP, Timberland, and Bayer, you know, the company that makes your aspirins. She builds and sustains competitive advantages by uncovering comprehensive, audience-specific insights for her clients. And her insights influence how they develop their campaigns, their PR campaigns, their advertising campaigns, their social media campaigns. They rely on her for this kind of information. And she also, in 2007, created McGauge, which is the agency's proprietary measurement and reporting dashboard. And she followed that up in 2012 with CSR Return Dashboard. All of this work is designed to measure the quantifiable impact of CSR campaigns. What's CSR? Corporate social responsibility, A+. So she does this for her clients, and she's here today to share it with you. She, not only that, but she has her bachelor's degree from Boston College, where I earned mine, congratulations. And she went to BU, to the College of Communication, and she earned her master's degree there. And we're very proud of having you here today. Thank you very much, Andrea. Let's give her a warm welcome. Merle.
Hi, I'm Meryl Carlson, Chair of the Communication Program here, and I know I want to get to what you guys say, so Brian, excuse me if I keep it a little simple. I'm happy to welcome Brian Dolan here. He's CEO and founder of Work Reduce. It's about 4 years old now, startup, 3 years old. Brian is a person that I see periodically, and whenever I've seen you in social settings or wherever, you always teach me more about my field than what I already knew. Because you've been on the cutting edge of the data technology and how data has been influencing advertising and programmatic advertising. So I'm really happy to have you here today to share some of the things you tell me and a lot of the things I don't know with our students. Brian, as I said, is CEO and founder of Work Reduce, would provide services to the advertising industry using a hybrid of people and automation. The platform supports digital media buyers, so this is the media planning, media buying part of the advertising industry, who are working on campaigns for brands including Google, Unilever, and Target. You may know a couple of those. Prior to founding Work Reduce, Brian was involved in online and mobile advertising with other organizations, including DataZoo, which is a local company, and Npocket, which was acquired by Nokia. And his background is in both product management as well as software engineering. And so what I really appreciate is that you can talk the tech talk and then explain it in ways that we as humans can actually understand. So I am very much looking forward to your presentation, and I think we're going to get started first with Andrea, and then Brian will follow up. So thank you very much.
Great, so thank you very much for having me, and thank you for the introduction. I come from the agency side, so COMDay Communications is a Boston-based PR and marketing communications agency, and we're part of the global Porter Valley network. So we work with a lot of consumer-facing brands, all companies that you're probably familiar with and use in your daily life, and also have a specialty in corporate social responsibility. That's actually what COMDay is most known for out in the marketplace, and part of the reason that we were able to join the Porter Valley network so that we could take that CSR expertise and bring it globally across their client network. So a little bit of what we'll talk about today. I'll explain my specific role within the agency, SPAR. That's our acronym for the work that I do, so you guys can start to guess what those letters mean. And then I will take you through some case studies to show exactly how we apply data and analytics to the work that I'm doing on a daily basis. Strategic planning, analytics, and research. So I lead up SPAR for the Boston office. And so those are the three pillars of work that I work across. Strategic planning, so that is basically understanding a client's pain point, diagnosing exactly what it is, even when the client can't articulate it themselves, digging into the audience, into the landscape of that company in the marketplace, and really landing on the strategic imperative, the white space upon which we're going to base all of the content strategy, the channel strategy. Everything starts from the account planning. Analytics, we'll talk about that more today, and then research is custom surveys, focus groups, basically any kind of proprietary research that we're doing on behalf of the client. So that all falls under SPAR, and I lead all of that out for Com. And today, jobs within SPAR Analytics specifically, that's probably some of the best job security you can have in the PR industry today overall. 2017 was not the greatest year for our industry, at least from the agency perspective, but if you had a specialty in data and analytics or research, you were gold. You knew you were going to make it through the end of the year, and you even had an opportunity to find new jobs, because everybody is looking to add this capability at the agency world and even in-house. So this article here at the end of 2017 from PR Week, basically stating that this is the new field that everybody is looking to be a part of. This comes from big data. When that got popular a few years ago, everybody wanted a piece of big data, realized they didn't know how to access it, and even if they could access it, they didn't know what to do with it. So now we have gotten to a place where suddenly we're hiring people with an expertise in data who can bring those insights to bear when developing a strategy. So how is this changing the world of PR? I have a couple of examples here of how I am working every day and seeing the changes even from the beginning of my own particular career. So even 5 years ago, if we were to describe your target audience for a client, say this is an entertainment and software brand, you could say men 35 to 54. Nowadays, that no longer cuts it. You have to break down the audience all by their individual need state and how exactly they interact with technology. So your target audience is no longer men 35 to 54. Today, it's entertainment enablers. And it's exactly how is it that they're going to be interacting with your product, and how are they different from the existing audience, all broken down here by data visualizations like that. Yesterday, this was a media list that you could share with your clients, saying these are all the media that we're going to be outreaching to with your brand news. Today, this is what a media list needs to look like. The client's going to come to you and say, okay, why this media? What can I expect from them? How do we know that they're going to interact with our product? So they want the right sweet spot of how relevant are they to your industry, how much consumers are going to engage with their content, the resonance, and then of course the size of the audience, all broken down by the stakeholder group that they have. So this is a common influencer mapping exercise that clients are demanding nowadays before we even get to the media list. Measurement and reporting. It used to be enough to say this many placements, this many eyeballs, and here are the mastheads of all the places that we landed your content. Now it's online real-time dashboards that start to draw the connection between, okay, not just placements and impressions, but how much did you increase your website traffic? How much longer are people staying on your page? Can you see peaks and valleys from different PR push periods and hero moments? And they want to be able to find out this information any time of day, whenever they ask. So quite a bit different, the way that clients know that data has in the data and analytics group, oftentimes in the background, who are supplying this information to help provide the foundation for the communication strategy across all of our clients. So we'll take a look now at some case studies of how I apply this work to our daily client situations. So first here is when it comes to account planning. So I talked a little bit about before, diagnosing the client pain point, helping to understand exactly what is the channel strategy that we're going to put in front of this client to share their news. And so data plays a very important role. It contains information here that without it, you're going to be left with either listening to the client, certainly fulfilling the ask, but maybe not actually fulfilling the pain point that lives underneath the ask. But when you do apply data and analytics, it makes you look a lot smarter and your client more likely to buy into the recommendation that you put in front of them. This is a food and beverage client. All of these case studies are scrubbed because I know you've heard of all of these brands, but I want to make sure that you still have access to the information that they consider proprietary. This is a food and beverage brand who came to us saying that they wanted a communication strategy that leverages traditional media and mommy bloggers to share new product information about the brand. Okay, it sounds pretty simple. It's a traditional PR ask. So the first thing that I did was dig into how traditional media have covered this brand in the past. So this chart here shows their coverage over time by traditional media broken down by sentiment. So the green is the positive sentiment, the red is the negative sentiment. And you can start to see here that this is a brand that quite often can be, frankly, bashed in the media. There are certain outlets, certain very, very important, widely read outlets that love to tear this brand apart. And so it's pretty much a 50-50 toss-up that whenever you put new brand information out to media, they're going to use it as an opportunity to resurface old grievances against this particular brand. So this is the traditional media over time. Then I took a look at how this brand performs across social media. So you can see here that it is, not only is there more conversation about this brand happening on social media, but it's also quite a bit more positive. There are a lot of very fervent brand advocates who are sharing positive brand news and are likely to drown out the negative detractors. So this tells me my first thing, the first part of the ask, leverage traditional media. Already I'm thinking that there's something that we need to revise about that particular strategy just based on how we think their news will be received. The next piece, if you recall, is that they asked us to leverage mommy bloggers to share the news. The idea being that if we can give free product away to mommy bloggers, they'll write a positive review, and then suddenly everyone will be interested in this product. This cluster analysis here breaks down all of this particular brand's social media followers based on like-minded interests. And you can see I've circled there on the right-hand side, mommy bloggers and deal finders, which is another name for coupon bloggers. So yes, there are certainly mommy bloggers, coupon bloggers who do follow this brand and will actively talk about it. But what you can also see is they are off on an island by themselves. They're a bit disconnected from the rest of the followers for this brand. So that tells me that even if you reach out to mommy bloggers to share this brand news, they're not necessarily reaching general consumers. They're all kind of talking to themselves or this very, very tight-knit group of mommy blogger followers. So the ultimate recommendation that we put forth to this brand was in complete opposite of what they actually asked us to do. We recommended that they leverage social media for new product announcements, leveraging brand ambassadors who can create positive content on their own and create this groundswell of excitement over new products. But had we not gone and done the analysis of media and brand followers, we could very easily have found ourselves with another negative New York Times front page story about this brand. Next is optimization. So when I'm talking optimization, that means in the middle of a campaign, what changes can we make to what we have going on to help us do better? So that's either we're not meeting a key performance indicator, a KPI, we're not achieving something, so do we need to shift somewhere? We also can just see that sometimes certain audiences aren't receptive to messages, so optimizing is always something that you want to be doing on a regular basis to make sure that you are maximizing the return on what you put in the marketplace. And analytics is something that's really enabled us to be better at optimizing our campaign performance. In the past, PR often found itself in a place where you suggest a campaign, you put it in place, and then you report at the end and you explain why you did or did not hit your KPIs. Now with optimization, campaigns have to be flexible enough to shift over time because things often aren't going to work out as you hope they did at the outset. This is a pet care brand, a popular pet care brand, that asked us, again, all very simple PR requests. They launched a new PSA about their product. It was a video, so they wanted us to drive 500,000 video views to this PSA across their social channels and see a 5% post engagement. So that's people liking, sharing, commenting on this particular video. So we started out with a paid social campaign on Facebook and Instagram. Basically, we went out and wanted to optimize the post for video views across these two channels. And what we found, you recall it was 500,000 views that we wanted to achieve, is that we were falling just shy of that based on the number of views that we were seeing through paid on these two channels. And we are also falling short of our engagement goal. We are right about 2%. So when people are seeing this particular video post in their feed, you're not sticking around the 10 seconds or 30 seconds, depending on the channel, to count as a view, and then they're certainly not sharing the content across their own channels. So we were able to switch at this point and engage with two bloggers who had worked in the past with this particular brand. We gave them the video to share across their own blogger network and paid for them to boost the post across their own social channels. So not only did that switch midstream allow us to exceed the 500,000 view goal, but we actually jumped from about a 3% post engagement to 16% post engagement by using those bloggers as a conduit to share this message as opposed to boosting it directly on the brand's social channels. So again, that's that flexibility. Not going back to the client and saying, okay, well, we didn't quite hit that 500,000 views, we didn't quite make that engagement, but we'll know for next time. We knew that we wanted to not only deliver on those key performance indicators, but exceed, and so we were nimble enough to be able to rejigger our strategy in the middle of this campaign. And then finally, the last case study I want to talk about is specific to measurement and reporting, and it's integrating data and analytics so that you can take your reporting beyond the placements and impressions, like the example of that I showed just a bit earlier. And when you are able to do that, you can actually start to show how the target audience is interacting with the content that you put out there. I don't know if you've heard the term Vanity Metrics, but that's typically what we consider things like placements and impressions, because it's easy to show big numbers with those two particular metrics, but it doesn't exactly tell you what the audience did with that information once they had it, and then the impact to the business through the integration of data and analytics, digital analytics from corporate websites. We can start to see exactly a lot of the downstream impacts of the PR work that we're doing. This is a financial services client, a local client to the Boston area, and they just had a cause campaign that they asked us to launch for them. So the campaign itself, we thought it was very successful, 375 media placements, just under 1 million impressions, which sounds pretty good on the face of it. But realize is you have no actual context for those numbers. You don't know that maybe other campaigns were or were not just as successful. You don't know what the average campaign for this type of work should be bringing in. So these numbers on their own, while they may seem like they're very good, they're really not telling you what happened next once consumers were exposed to it. So what we did here is dig into, through analytics, exactly how consumers were interacting with this message. So we have the Vanity Metrics over there on the left. Certainly any PR campaign, you're going to have access to all of that information. Placements, questions, every placement picked up on our key messages, 90% positive tonality. And looking at social, we were able to see how the audience interacts with this information. So through the campaign itself, we were able to generate about 1,200 organic social media posts, 1,000 shares of the campaign hashtag, saw that 1,300% increase in brand social media mentions during the campaign window, and were able to boost their overall Instagram followers. And the campaign hashtag was the #1 trending hashtag for that day in this region. So very well received by consumers across social. And then we were able to follow those consumers to the brand's corporate website. We saw a boost of 4,500 unique page views to that particular campaign microsite, and people were spending just over 3 minutes on the page, where the average time spent on page was somewhere in the area of about 2 minutes and 45 seconds. We were able to show just how sticky this particular content was. So this is just an example of how I am using data on a daily basis to really support the thinking that all of the PR practitioners that I work with are doing. So why does data matter? When we talk about it, it supports the smart thinking that builds better programs and drives deeper return for your clients or for the agency yourself. So deeper returns means more repeat business, more work from the client themselves, and all of that goes directly to the bottom line of the agency. So using these data and analytics isn't just good for the client, it's actually good for the agency itself.
Thank you, Mary. Are there any questions before we move on, Erin? Some of my questions said that.
I had the fortune of going to the same conference as Nancy. We were trying to maximize both of us being there, so I did get to see your presentation, so I'm so glad that she brought you to campus. I see the learning piece to this as really, I see a kind of two ends. So data has always been around, but PR professionals are now having to think about the data, going along with their story, going along with supporting them. So there's that piece of the PR professional kind of switching gears, thinking in this quantitative sense, and having to learn that. The flip side is, I imagine that, so in one of the sessions that I attended, the CFOs, the CEOs, they're interested in the numbers, right? Supporting that sentiment, supporting that story. However, how do you, or is the data something that you actually teach? The one car dealership that comes in and needs a different PR campaign, or, what does that look like in actually educating some of those organizations that may not be asking for the numbers?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've actually seen a switch now so that the organizations are starting to ask for the numbers, but yeah, some of those less data savvy organizations, being able to sell in, adding analytics to a campaign oftentimes comes down to maybe just giving them a little bit of a taste of the difference. Do you want a measurement report that says placements, impressions, and a bunch of mastheads, or do you want a real-time dashboard that measures actual return? The ultimate stakeholder, so like you said, CFO, on a day-to-day basis, we're dealing with a PR manager, maybe a CMO, but more often than not, it's someone who specializes particularly in brand or PR, but it's understanding that they have a person to answer to as well, and probing on, okay, what types of measures do you have to share with your manager to be able to sell in your programs over time. So if you position yourself as a strategic advisor to your client, the sell for analytics becomes a lot easier. That combined with dazzling them, so to speak, with what they can get for analytics is often the best way to be able to include it. And another note about what you said, this idea of PR practitioners having to switch their thinking and support it with data and analytics, coming at it from my perspective, I would almost say that it all starts with the data and analytics, and then the PR practitioner comes in next and builds a program based on what the data and insights are showing. In the earlier days of integrating analytics and research, it was, here's the strategy, please go find the data to support it, my thinking. And that's what, quite frankly, happens still a lot. And not to say that the strategy is necessarily always wrong, but if you want to differentiate yourself, that car dealership, there's 1,000 other car dealerships that you can go to. What's the white space for that one? It's not developing a strategy and supporting it with research. It's starting from a place of data and insights and then developing a strategy from there.
Awesome, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Andrea? This one down there.
Hi, I actually work as a digital marketing specialist, and a lot of my job is data. A third of it, at least, is just all data. And what I found is that the numbers can only tell you so much, and there's a lot left to interpretation. So I'm curious if there are any particular tools that you use to know if 3 minutes on a page versus 240 is actually a good thing or a bad thing. Are people confused, or are they engaging in a good way?
So that's very true. I mean, numbers only go so far, but you don't want to discount the human element. I can do a whole other presentation about the actual research insights, which kind of sound like the soft side of this, but putting yourself in the mind of the consumer or the client. But as far as being able to put numbers themselves into context, I would say benchmarking is what's most crucial. So 3 minutes, 20 seconds on a page doesn't mean anything if the average page time spent is 5 minutes. So there's a lot of upfront work to these campaigns that's just about benchmarking against not only yourself, but your competitors, maybe an industry, and it's not necessarily your direct competitors, but it could just be a competitor for how you can spend your time. It's knowing exactly where those particular entities are today, so that way when you can be able to put your own metrics in context and say, oh, actually 3 minutes and 20 seconds is about 45 seconds longer than people are spending on average on this website, or people are going 5 pages deep into the website as opposed to just hitting the home page and then bouncing off. So the benchmarking, it's not sexy. It's something that a lot of companies don't want to do. They just want to hurry up and get to the strategy and execution. But if you really want your results to be able to sing, it is a pretty crucial part of the process.
Another question? We can come back after our next presentation. Thank you, Andrea.
Ready? Okay, I'm Brian, and we're going to talk a little bit about just taking it back to the ad industry, kind of what's going on in the industry as a whole, and then kind of dive down into the data side of it. I'm trying to not make this too geeky, because I come at this from the software side of the world. Is my background. So where's it? Here it is. Okay, so you guys have probably seen this quote. It's an old saw. If you're in the U.S., it's attributed to this guy, John Wanamaker. If you're in the EU, funnily enough, they say a guy named Lever said the same thing. He was the founder of Unilever, one of the largest global advertisers. But this is the thing that advertisers are struggling with when they're buying ads. How do I know what's working? You know, if we're looking at metrics like time on the page, like what does that actually mean? How am I affecting it? Like there's a lot of existential questions in the ad industry that are just like unanswered. Like how do ads really work? Does it actually work? People agree in general that it works, but like which specific way is working and how, like you can't sit 5 people in the industry down in a room together and get them to agree on it. The numbers don't lie though, like basically it's a $500 billion global industry on target to be about $600 billion. And you know, this covers the both the creative production and the kind of ad placements themselves. The majority of it probably go into the ads. And so it's like these numbers are kind of pretty difficult to nail down when you actually kind of drill into them because everyone has different definitions of everything. But you know, people generally agree 500 to 600 billion. Most of it's in the US, lucky us, we get a lot of ads here. The next largest market is China, growing like a weed, it's absolutely nuts. You know, followed by a bunch of others. But you know, you go up to Canada and it's just like an absolutely minuscule market. It doesn't even make this rank here. And I think, I noticed this on the way over here, I think that peaked billions at the top, because if you add that up, it doesn't otherwise make sense if this is actually global. And Zenith is like a legit agency, so hopefully they got this right. But recently, internet kind of like took over from TV, right? So this has been like in the past, 5 years, the internet finally took over the majority of the ad spend. Before that, it was television. All that money, like from the internet side of it, guess where it came from? Newspapers. That's why, like, the print industry is an absolute disaster right now. It's really tough, and the newspapers like to say, hey, we've traded, traditional dollars for online pennies or dimes, right? But, this is the data that they're trying to measure, right? Everyone's trying to measure when they're looking at ads is what am I spending? What does it actually turn out to in terms of a result that matters for me? And these are the largest global advertisers. You'll notice kind of on this list, some familiar names. So the biggest categories, right, in advertising and ad spend are going to be our consumer packaged goods, the CPGs. So there's our friend Unilever there. We've got Procter & Gamble. Those are all of our favorite products like Axe and Tide and all that stuff. We've got the automotive companies up there. We've got some luxury brands. I was actually really surprised to see Comcast on this list. And Amazon's a new breakout. Amazon's also actually taking over the kind of like ad buying industry. We'll talk about that in a second. It's really interesting. And it's a super, like, unbelievably, like, complicated, landscape out here. So look at this as like, money's flowing from this side to that side. So you got brands over here, and then, we're on the other side receiving the ads. This chart is kind of infamous in the industry. It's put together by a banker. It's kind of like a shopping list for people who want to buy companies. So everything outlined in red has been acquired. So there's been this like crazy buying spree that's been going on, consolidation. Like a bunch of companies here in Boston have all rolled up into now AOL and Verizon. So you had, there's a company here called JumpTap. They were a cool mobile startup. They got rolled into Millennial Media, which was out of Baltimore. Millennial and JumpTap then got bought by AOL, and AOL got bought by Verizon, and it's just like, it's totally insane. And now they're with Yahoo, and AOL also has the former Microsoft ad network assets in there. And by all accounts, for everyone who's working there, it's a hot mess. Trying to figure out what's going on. So basically, we've got the money flowing from one side to the other. And this, I think, is maybe a little bit overstates the complexity, just because it's made by bankers who are trying to sell these things. The reality is, most of the money flows through a handful of global holding companies. So we've got WPP, Omnicom, Publicis. So WPP is based in London. Omnicom's a US company. Publicis is France. IPG, I forget anyone know where IPG is? I think that's a US company. it might be French, I forget. And then Dentsu's Japanese and Cavazos in Spain. And basically, they own the vast majority of all the ad agencies, all the PR. You guys are in Indy, or you don't roll? Oh, you roll? No, okay, see? Everything rolls up into this stuff. And if you do the math in your head here, you're like, well, hey, that's only about $50 billion in revenue, whereas these guys are taking about 10%, right, of the global ad spend. So 10% of 500 billion, like almost all of it rolls through here. Some of it goes direct to Google and Facebook. But, so generally, any ad agency you'll see, is going through one of these holding companies. Some, direct advertisers will do stuff on their own. And the recipients of that money, like overwhelmingly, are like two companies, right? Facebook and Google like masquerade as something other than advertising companies, but they're ad companies. Amazon, as I mentioned before, is coming into this, like going gangbusters. A lot of professionals that I know from the industry have ended up working there. They're making huge inroads into selling ads, but basically, Google and Facebook are taking all the money because they have a lot of data and their data works. Like if you buy an ad on Facebook, they just have so much like end-to-end data about who you are and what you buy that they can correlate your ad to somebody who's like you in your network. And like you just put your campaign in there and it's like magic. At DataZoo, we were trying to do the same kind of thing with other data, right? Data from third-party sources. And like that data had some quality issues potentially, and didn't work as great. When Facebook does it, it's really. So if you want to run some ads, I would start with Facebook. But I think the challenge, right, for every advertiser is like, it's just such a complicated, life cycle of engaging with you guys as consumers, with any of us as consumers. And like every brand has like a different agenda. Like you think about like Boeing is an advertiser, you see ads for Boeing. Why does Boeing want to advertise? Like none of us are gonna like buy Boeing ever, right? Well, they're thinking about, hey, well if something ever goes wrong, we gotta have some awareness. We gotta reach people who might buy our stock, right? So you've got people who are they only live in this kind of awareness side of the customer journey. But then you've got other folks who are like, buy now. You think about your Ron Pope TV ads, right? Direct response marketers. You think about, if you guys saw DraftKings earlier today, they tore it up trying to do direct response, getting you to get on the DraftKings and like sign up and spend some money gambling. So, like, there's such a range of possible outcomes for an advertiser that it's really hard to kind of say, hey, there's really consistent themes and stuff that you can do. But most of the data that we think about in digital is coming from just basic tracking information, right? This is where we'll get into some of how the big data works. So when we're surfing the web, when we're on our mobile phones, what's happening is there are these third-party systems. So you're viewing a web page, as an example, this is a simple example, and that web page comes from a web server. In addition to the web pages being called, these kind of third-party servers are also delivering data to the page. And that's what's used to track your kind of action, whether it's across that funnel. Now, the tough part is, it's hard to do this on mobile. If you're watching TV, we can't see what you're watching. And that's what everyone's trying to do with data, is really cross all these streams together. And like, it's not a perfect science. And that's, I think, one of the things that I noticed, like, working with software engineers trying to build systems like that are reporting this stuff. They're like, well, what's the right answer? And the answer is often like, we don't know. It's very fuzzy, and we're trying to like correlate things. It's not like a cut and dry kind of situation. So this is where big data comes in. So big data has kind of three kind of main characteristics to it. And big data, I think, started out as this kind of like, wow, super hyped thing. It's actually turning out to be very interesting and real. But the three aspects that people agree on about what big data means are that it's high velocity, right? There's a lot of variety, and there's a lot of volume. So what do these mean? So velocity means, it's coming in all the time. So if you think about an ad campaigns are generally running 24/7, right? That data is like cranking through there. You've always got to be on top of the data. So you've got traditional data used to be like, well, I get my report on the ad campaign once a week or once a month if I'm lucky, right? Now it's coming in streaming in real time. Variety, you think about that whole kind of consumer path that we just talked about, getting some data from TV planning, getting data from the web, getting data from mobile. That's a huge variety of data. And then the volume of it, we'll talk about it in a second. It's right now kind of at the petabyte scale. That's kind of the threshold for thinking about big data, but it's growing quickly. That's a lot of data. So how big is a petabyte? So forget, I don't know what that nibble thing is, that doesn't really make sense, but a bit, right, is a 1 or a 0 in a computer, right? You need 8 of those, 8 bits to make a byte, which is the minimum for a kind of letter, unless you're dealing with Unicode like Japanese and Chinese characters. So there's about 1,000 of those in a book, and so on, and you have 160,000 books, and that gets you to a petabyte. So what does that look like in terms of ad data? Yeah, it keeps going, right? So, like, the biggest systems right now are kind of like at a, I think exabyte level, probably like Google and Facebook have some of those. But in practical terms, most stuff is kind of, we're at this petabyte level. And I look at this and the kind of number of zeros kind of swim together for us. So I try to count the commas. So petabyte has the 5 commas in it. That's like a trillion, right? So how does this work? So this is we do a lot of work for Google's agency, and these are publicly available numbers, so nothing's kind of too crazy on this, but Google is well-known, spends about $1.2 billion a year on advertising globally, right? And when we think about like ad costs, they range from anywhere from, you can be buying ad inventory at an impression basis for pennies. Your TV inventory, if you back it out to cost per view, it might cost you 20 per 1,000, right? It could be 80 for something premium. So, but 10 is easy math, and it's a nice kind of round number. So if we say, hey, we've got $1 billion, and we're doing roughly $10 per 1,000, that gives us 100 billion impressions there, which is a lot. And each ad, and this is really oversimplifying it, it's going to have about maybe 10 really meaningful things that you're going to be using from an analytics perspective, right? Where did it show? Kind of what time did I show it? How much did I pay for it? In reality, there's probably closer to 100, but most of them are kind of superfluous. But say 10 really meaningful ones. That gets you to, I'm losing my zeros here. Gets you to a trillion. And then say each one of those is a 1K data point. There's your petabyte right there. So you're at this really crazy amount of data. This is one advertiser. So figure Google represents 1 billion out of 500 or 600 that are being spent. So advertising is throwing off just a massive amount of data. When we started at DataZoo back in 2009, we were starting to build some of these real-time systems. Shit broke all the time. It was like crazy. Like the first, stuff still breaks. It's really, a lot of what we do is kind of helping people fix things. But like, it's hard to manage this amount of data. It's challenging all the time to kind of keep it going. And that puts aside the question of kind of like, how can I extract the meaning from it? And one of the things that we do as a company is we're trying to help people have enough time to like extract the meaning instead of just dealing with keeping the data flowing and getting the reports updated and blah, blah, blah. So, there's a lot of data out there. And I just wanted to run through kind of what we do for some of our customers. So this is an older and kind of slightly cleansed case study. So this is a kind of reporting output for a campaign run West Coast. My friend Beth she's got a company called Shopper Bridge. It's mobile location targeting, and she's an awesome, like super fierce entrepreneur. And this is a wrap-up report that they did for Clorox via an agency, via another agency, right, a couple of kind of things removed. This is the kind of stuff that we're getting out the other side. So we're saying, hey, we're running X amount of dollars for Clorox floor dusters, right? And we've got these kind of like high-level targets. But what Beth is doing that's interesting, she's giving them some kind of, these are the Vanity Metrics, which, I think they're pretty, I don't know if I like the vanity term. It's like they're real, and you do kind of track it back to, real metrics like the cost per engaged visit, right? But what she's doing that's interesting is targeting people who are inside of stores or near stores, and then able to kind of plot this out for them. So one of the things I'm trying to help out with right now is actually overlaying some of this data with performance metrics to say, hey, great, let's run this through a data warehouse where we can kind of color code this by engagement level and stuff like that. But so somebody on the other end of this is kind of saying, hey, great, well, should I spend more or less money here, right, as a result of a graph like this? And then looking at, are there trends out of these locations? And people sit here and they're like looking at, all right, hey, what are the hours that are working for this campaign, or what are click rates? When are people kind of running the ads or responding to the ads correctly? And I think in general it's still a lot like reading tea leaves, instead of being super scientific. So anyway, that's all I got. And let me know if you have any questions.
Questions for Brian?
Hi. So you guys, when you talked about the measurement reports and everything, I was just wondering how valuable are impressions versus clicks and shares? I know it's PPC, per clicks and everything. I was just wondering.
I mean, I'd say people are trying to look at it holistically, right? You have to have, impressions are going to give you a measure of reach, like how much stuff am I getting out there, right? And then you're going to divide it in by unique reach, all right? So how many times am I reaching all the people? The clicks may or may not give you anything of meaning, right? So clicks can, certainly tell you, is the ad working? Is it recording data? It definitely gives you that. Most people, I think, in a display and video world are looking at other views, and this is what the cookies I mentioned kind of allow you to track through, which is there some kind of downstream metric that I can be looking at? In-store visit, right, is what Beth was going for. Other people, if you think about DraftKings, they were looking at signups, right? And they're able to, I know from the DraftKings guys, they would look at stuff like, hey, let's correlate when our radio ads run with when the signups occurred. And they're just doing it by hand, right? There's no kind of fancy big data stuff. So, just getting back to what I said about Boeing versus DraftKings, it depends a ton on kind of who you are as an advertiser, but what your goals are. And I think one of the challenges is that people end up looking at it in silos rather than holistically. Want to do that?
Yeah. I would just say on the PR side of the house, impressions, it's potential reach, and what it's not really telling you is ultimately you're trying to build reputation for sales, and so without knowing things like how are consumers engaging with the content, so it's a lot more content certainly on the PR side. How are they engaging with the content? What type of content are they most likely to engage with? Times of day, what words we can even look at own channel metrics and say, what content came directly from PR sources and what are people's journey on the website after that happens, so we can get a sense for the kinds of consumers that are coming from PR sources. So just relying on impressions really only tells you, so for example, the New York Times newspaper placement is probably what, 1 million impressions is held with newspaper. I don't know, maybe it's maybe it's only 500,000 impressions these days. But if you think back to the first food and beverage plan I was talking about, there's a pretty good chance that when the New York Times writes about this plan, they're going to just eviscerate them. So to go back to your client and be like, hey, look, we got you 1 million impressions. Crap up. Are they actually buying, or are they, then turning in the product? So we have to go left first.
So, question, in thinking about, and I guess this is kind of for either of you or both of you want to answer it. So we used to think of PR kind of as a funnel, right? And same with advertising. The consumer thinks about a product they need or want, begins to research the brand, then hopefully we get them to buy. And you kind of touched upon, Brian, the life cycle really now of the process. It's no longer a funnel, but rather a loop. And or a journey, yeah. And so I'm wondering, how important are those people that are sitting just kind of on the awareness side? They haven't maybe yet used the particular brand or product, but how important are they in influencing those that will eventually become the consumers of the product or the brand? I mean, I know there's potential for them to become the consumer, but how do they influence the actual other consumers or those using the brand?
I'll start. One of the big things in building awareness can often be around corporate social responsibility. So, and you touched on this with Boeing, it's when we screw up, we need to know that we've built enough goodwill. So just making, that we'll, Delta, wherever you come off on its stance with their, without supporting NRA, they want to know that they've built up enough goodwill with people just through awareness and putting themselves out there that they're still going to continue to use Delta. It also comes down, and this speaks to their customers, license to operate. So if you've built up a reservoir of goodwill and Walmart wants to move into your backyard, people will be likely to support them even if they'll never be a customer, but now having a Walmart in a new market brings in a ton of new customers. So that general awareness and a positive reputation is something that can, whether it's forgiving misdeeds, things like license to operate, certainly investors, those are all sorts of non-sales specific means that, about that life cycle. It's not a customer journey where it's one person being aware it's suddenly going to be an end customer, but there's so many other things about a company that it's going to affect.
Yeah, and I just say it varies so much by where you are in an industry. You think about going back to DraftKings again, who knew you could do fantasy sports and bet on it and make money, right? So there's some awareness there. Or you think about that inflatable couch that was all over Facebook, where you guys know that one. So that was one, they have this inflatable couch, and who knew there was such a thing? You got to build awareness with those. But if it's insurance, everybody knows about insurance, or credit scores. If you're Experian, who's your market? All adults. There's no awareness that we really need to build about credit scores. So, there you're kind of operating at a lower end of the funnel. So, and I would just say the funnel versus the journey, they're still both valid. I think a lot of people talk more about that journey now, but it just depends on what you're doing.
Hi. So my question has to do, earlier when you and Brian were talking about the consolidation or convergence, depending on how you look at it, of advertising corporations. And so my kind of question about that is, how has that convergence or consolidation affected data analytics? And in that way, how has that affected the engagement with audiences for your various clients?
I don't know, that's a tough question. On one hand, it's creating these walled gardens, right, where the data is less open. Google and Facebook own the data, and it's a real challenge for advertisers. If you look back at search, You know, when you're buying your search term as a company from Google, you're effectively leasing your name back from them. That's crazy, right? And so, you know, what brands are facing right now is this threat that like even more of their data could be owned by some of these companies, Google, Facebook, whoever. So the major trend I think that you're seeing right now in the industry is that brands are beginning to take their media buying away from the agencies and bring it in-house. In part is a reaction to that. It's not yet stopping that, you know, fact that they're all spending their money on Google and Facebook, but they're beginning to start by owning the contracts with the ad servers, owning some of the analytics stack. So like the whole thing is just, the whole industry is just rapidly moving. It's going to continue to change. You know, it's like a total moving target. So it's hard to say where it's going to land, but you know, I don't know if you'd have anything, Andrew.
So Brian, earlier you mentioned Facebook and advertising and how they know where you've been online. A couple weeks ago, I went to Wayfair. I was looking for a linen tower, linen closet. I looked at it for quite a while. My contractor said, no, it's not right, it won't work. So I forgot about it. But every time I log into Facebook, it's still there. It was 2 weeks ago. How long are they going to remind me that I decided not to get that linen tower?
Well, we can march down to Wayfair and ask them how they're running their retargeting campaigns. You know, I think it's like that's one of those big examples that people use of like, oh wow, advertising is so crazy. I see like this ad over and over. The ads are so cheap that it's like not even worth it. You know, it's barely worth the time for them to try to optimize it down further, because you know, you're sitting there at Wayfair and you're trying to like optimize across a million SKUs or something. So they know for sure that that money they're spending showing you that linen tower, well, it's not working on you, but that retargeting campaign is working on somebody, right? Because they see enough of the data, you know, that it's definitely ROI positive or ROAS, return on ad spend positive for them. It's, you know, it's just hard to optimize at a you know, individual level and not even worth the time in some cases. Like the other big example is, hey, I already bought that product and I'm still seeing the ads for it, right? And it's like, well, you know, like, yeah, 9 out of 10 times that's true, but like, what about that one time when you're like, oh yeah, I could use 2, right? And like, it only takes like one of those for that ad, all the other ads to like pay for itself, you know, because if you think about it, you're paying, you know, we were talking about stuff that's averaging out to a penny per impression, right, at a $10 CPM. Hey, throw some pennies around, right? And when the purchase price is on an item, you know, like $50 or $100 or $1,000, you can throw away a ton of pennies, right, on stuff like that. So it's just a matter of where you're spending your optimizing time.
I can talk about. So you talked, both of you kind of talked a lot about the importance of data analytics when it comes to social media, especially now these days. So I'm wondering, and I know Brian, you specifically talked about Facebook and how intuitive it is as far as knowing target audiences and even purchasing what people have purchased in the past, what they're likely to purchase in the future based on purchasing behaviors. And so Facebook is really so intuitive when it comes to even being able to analyze the data analytics that go with that. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to the future with that, with the changing algorithms for Facebook and then really downplaying brands and like pages, business pages, and trying to focus more on really the social aspect of family and friends. I know that a ton has been going on over the past even 6 months with Facebook continually changing the algorithms. And sort of how that leads to you guys changing what you do for data analytics.
I think there's a different answer probably for you and for me from an algorithm perspective, but you think about the ads as completely separate from the newsfeed, right? So when you're targeting a campaign on Facebook, the 2 things they're going to ask you to do as a ad campaign like manager, one would be like upload the list of like addresses of your customers, and the second would be like upload all their email addresses. So that's the real data that they're optimizing off of. And then from there, they've spent a ton of money attracting the most kick-ass data scientists in the world who build models. Those are the algorithms that say, okay, you are like you, and you're like you, and for product X and category Y, we know that we can show the ad to this person and it's going to work well. They don't, and then in some cases they do have the checkout conversion. The algorithm changes that have been in the news lately are really more on the kind of publisher side. Who's getting to show up in your news feed organically and for free, and how much do they pay? So it's really, again, talking about the newspapers getting their butts kicked, it's really about Facebook has disintermediated a lot of the publishing industry, and those are that algorithm, the stuff that shows up in your news feed, like that's the stuff that is really getting affected now. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, Facebook's not going to do anything to hurt the paying customer. It's those of us, so, the pet product. Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, we just want to reach out to all the people who liked our Facebook page, so we're going to optimize this post to make sure it's really hitting on, a woman in this age range and has X number of, certain types of pets. And so that means we're now taking a hit because it's going to suddenly start optimizing more, social interactions. So
how do you sort of change what you do to?
we don't use Facebook anymore, from the bottom line. That's kind of it, right? Yeah, exactly. And Facebook has never been analytics friendly to, sharing its API, so, and only public facing pages. So anytime I'm reporting Facebook data, there's always that asterisk, based on, public pages, because Facebook is, because of how they've kind of walled themselves off. So as long as Instagram and Twitter continue to position themselves as the brand-friendly channels of choice, that's the money's going to go there, right?
So, two quick questions. Assuming you have privacy concerns about the future of data analytics, what would be your top concern? And a shorter question, have you developed your own software to analyze the data, or do you contract with data analytics companies to do that?
I can start on my side. I would say most of the products that you deal with in a PR agency are just going to be off the shelf. So, they'll be social listening tools or, media engagement tools. You're starting to get to a place now with reporting dashboards where the larger agencies, so someone the size of like a Porter and Valley, who is global, they're hiring the data scientists, the PhDs, all the the SQL programmers are, Python, all of they're coming in and building out their dashboards that depend on RSS feeds, APIs, any sort of live database. So certainly the larger agencies that can't afford to are starting to hire those people, and I would say that the custom products that we're building are and largely in the reporting and analytics space. Otherwise, it's probably just, if it appears like a proprietary product, they probably just skimmed something that's more off the shelf. It's much more efficient and cheaper to outsource all of the actual building and computer programming to a company.
Yeah, no, I'd just say to answer your question about privacy, absolutely it's a concern. I think there are both legitimate and nefarious uses for all the data that's out there. There's some crazy stuff that goes on with ad fraud right now. With distributing malware, those annoying redirects that you see kind of if you're on a mobile web page, like the fraudsters are actually individually targeting people now using the same technology that I would use to upload my customer data to Facebook to optimize my ads. Somebody can use that to distribute malware to people whose data has been breached in one of the big public data breaches. So it's crazy, and the industry's doing a shitty job of getting ahead of it, which is why you've got the browser manufacturers, so Safari and Apple on one hand, Google Chrome on the other, actually baking in certain degrees of anonymity and ad blocking. So it's like a moving target, it's something everyone should be aware of. And I don't think there are any easy answers out there because advertising basically funds the open internet, funds all the games that we play that are ad supported, and like people don't want to give that up. It's funding our press, right? So like if you shut it down and you make all the ads a lot less effective by limiting all the data targeting, well, that's a challenge. So, you know, the industry's not doing a great job. And then on the, I think the tools and analytics side, like, you know, you don't want to build stuff from scratch if you don't have to, because it's a huge pain in the butt and it just breaks all the time and it's expensive. It takes lots of people. I really like this tool that's out now called Domo, and you know, we're starting like that conversation with my friend Beth. You know, we're going to try to build some stuff in Domo because it's just so much easier than standing up a data warehouse, and then you plug in a BI tool on top of it, and then you got to write the SQL queries. Like, they've kind of, it's an evolution of the kind of products where you can cut out a lot of that really, really tedious. And I speak from experience, it's really tedious to like do that, even though, you know, the cloud now makes it unbelievably simple to stand up just massive data warehouses, you know, or really any kind of computer infrastructure. It's so easy, it's great, but less you have to do, the better. It's only so many hours in the day.
The BI, the data viz tools, Tableau, Domo, I mean, you know, it's, yeah, I mean, that's kind of transport, making analytics visual and easier to grasp to the client has, that's probably the last couple of years what's transformed the most. Probably what's exposed most of the clients to data. It's easier for them to get in-house, so they're understanding it very easily.
So a lot of the students in this room came, especially those who are communication majors, prefer the content side, right? They didn't come in as a communication major because they love technology. But clearly it's going to be part of their life at some level. I mean, they're not necessarily developing software products or engineering, but what would you tell somebody who's trying to get into that entry level, PR, advertising? What would be the minimum skill set, you know, whether it's Excel or being able to read certain kinds of statistics? What would you recommend?
Internships. I mean, the curriculum hasn't caught up to data and analytics and PR. 5 years ago, you couldn't take a CSR course. There were maybe a few, you know, grad programs that specialized in it, but on-the-job learning. So you maybe had a passion more for the, you know, do-gooder side of it, and that's a very oversimplified version of CSR, but you like numbers, you hate media relations. That was me. I liked PR. It's the idea of calling for a reporter and pitching something, making a skin crawl. But I knew it was the right industry, and you know, it helped that I was good with Excel. But Excel these days almost feels ancient sometimes. So you have to expose yourself early and often through internships, make your interests known at the entry level. Yes, some agencies are hiring non-com people, like the programmers, coders. They're not really crossing over to the content side, but that's really on the job. I think is really the only good way to get that exposure these days until the courses start to catch up and give you that
I'd say Excel pivot tables. Learn yourself some Excel, and if you do pivot tables well and you want an entry-level job, email. We'll be hiring, you know, hopefully through next year. Yeah, the pivot tables. It's, you know, be comfortable manipulating data. It's not, you know, like, it's not crazy hard. Like, if you're not familiar with it, you can watch videos online that get you through most of it, and you know, just be comfortable analyzing data. Practice, and you'll be good with it. But I'd say start with Excel, even though it's like it is kind of ancient. You know, it's basically 1970s technology, but the dirty secret of the media industry is that it's all Excel all the way down.
We have time for one more question.
All right, just so I'll throw in kind of two questions. So if we're kind of behind in terms of higher ed in offering data analytics courses, how important are courses like macroeconomics and microeconomics? Because there are some people in the PR world that are saying taking courses such as those could actually help with that data knowledge down the line. And then, kind of Brian, more so for you, your thought on cookies. I tell my students, you cannot fight the cookies. Like, there's no way. Like, the software is too complicated, and I'd like to know your thoughts on those cookies.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that a well-rounded person who exposes themselves to as much as anything is probably going to make you a more attractive candidate to me. But sure, a statistics course, I think more so than my husband's an economist. I have no idea what he's talking about. Ever. He's good for an Excel question though. If it's beyond my grasp, which is pretty far. But I would say statistics is probably, or maybe computer programming might be a better bet. Anything that's going to kind of get you comfortable with the analysis and contextualizing data. I think something that, again, I don't think that you have to become an expert in those. There's a lot that you can expose yourself to on the job. I mean, this wasn't an industry in PR that existed when I started, and I basically just taught myself how to do all that stuff. So, because I took research and, stats in college, not for my job, just because it was there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, look at, our biggest client is Essence Digital, and they're Google's ad agency, and the people who I see excelling there a lot of them are like self-taught in stats and programming, and the folks who are like, hey, wow, I'm like 5 years out of school, and I'm like waiting tables, and I really want to like get somewhere, and they start taking courses online and watching videos. You can do a lot of damage, just teaching yourself stuff. Micro, macro, econ, I don't know. I don't remember those courses from college. So, but stats for sure. You can teach a lot of this stuff yourself. You don't have to be a super software engineer to really make a difference. And on the cookie side, I mean, if there's no cookies, like you can still get fingerprinted in other ways that they're looking at non-data. So, the cookies really help make the ads more effective. And I look at that as generally a good thing. I don't know. It's a tough question. There's not a simple answer to it. Thanks.
So I'd like to thank both of our speakers. This has been very, very, very informative. Andrea wanted me to let you know that, true to her word, she's leaving some of her business cards here for those of you interested in internships with her. So please come up and say hello and take them. Thank you so much.